Welcome along, everyone. Hello, hello, hello.
Good
We
morning.
are we are getting. I'm afternoon.
Good
I'm
afternoon.
confused about where I am. It's a delight to see you all. I know that a few people have met us before, so it's a delight to see you again. And for those of you that we haven't met before, it's also a delight to see you. And for those of you that have registered and are going to listen to the recording, thank you very much. And more fool you if you thought you could watch two very excited Scottish people at double speed
No.
when you're watching the recording. It was a foolish thought process, but we are delighted that you're here. And in terms of those two Scottish people, here we are. We have Claire Carmichael, who is the Innovation Director of Illuminate AI. Claire is, how do I describe Claire? Claire is brains on legs. Her body is merely a transportation device for her brain. And has led on the majority of our enablement programs, our digital colleague programs, and since then has started a movement in a lot of our organizations that we work with, which is hashtag We Want a Claire. And I am Kirsty Mack. I'm strategic advisor to Illuminate AI. I am a coach. And so I work with a lot of boards. And as you can imagine, a lot of the conversations that we are having with boards are centered around AI, albeit that I come at it from the human perspective. It's very much from the AI perspective as well. And so we invite you along here. We're going to talk about some of the things that we are seeing, that we're witnessing, that we're paying attention to, because some people are talking about AI. Not sure if you noticed. Please interact with us in the chat, because more than anything else, it makes Claire and I feel a little less awkward, like we've just decided to record ourselves, and that just feels odd. So please say hi to us on the chat, or indeed ask any questions as we go through. Claire and I will monitor, as will Hayley in the background as well. And then also, if you have any particular questions, you just want to come direct to us, then by all means, get in touch in the Q&A button. And so AI is everywhere. But for some people, it's nowhere on the bottom line. It's nowhere on the profit and loss. $450 billion were spent on AI last year, where we're seeing statistics from Gartner, CBS, McKinsey also came out. They're very, very similar in terms of the stats. That 78% of these organizations are saying that they are yet to see a significant gain in the work that they're doing within AI. And we're going to talk about some of the components of why we think that is as we go through today. And 88% of people, so there was, who was this by? Udemy, and this is also linked into one by Hotwire. They said that 88% of people believe that their leadership needs to be in a place in order for any AI projects and any AI implementation or enablement to be successful. It very much sits in the space of leadership. But actually, only 55% of them think that that leadership is actually ready to sit in that space. But we're definitely seeing a shift. I would say, I don't know, what do you think, Claire? In the last, partly it's March, by the way, just to clarify that
Yeah.
in terms of timing. You would say maybe in the last sort of 3 months, a shift in the conversation and thought process?
Yeah, I think kind of post October into November, we obviously had our Nobel laureates extravaganza towards the end of last year. I think that really has started to materialize now into what is alarmingly close to Q1 of 2026, being a really significant change in posture
Yeah,
as we're engaging
yeah.
with people.
Yeah, and we're seeing that there is also a perception gap. So Hotwire and the House of Beautiful Business did a beautiful piece of work on agentic organizations. It's very delicious. We'll send a link out to you after this if you haven't seen it before. And they said that 70% of execs, leaders are unbelievably happy with AI because they're using it as a thought partner, someone to help with strategic decisions, a little bit of creativity, but only 43% of frontline workers, and perhaps we would say junior workers, are as happy. But also out of those 70% of people who are execs and leaders, they also said that 76% of them said that AI will be able to do their job in 5 years' time. Yeah, I love how you went. We just say it very, very quietly. And that's a perception gap. A perception gap sits in organizations just now. And where perhaps those that are in the space of frontline working or junior into the organization, then they may be using it for efficiency or productivity. Or they may have been in an organization, which I know none of you all are, but they may have been in an organization that said, we've turned on Copilot, our work here is done.
Good luck.
Those conversations are changing. Or indeed, you can have a license for a day and see how productive you can be and see how efficient you can be. And then maybe you'll be able to get a license a little bit later. But how do we shift that perception gap? What we're also seeing is there's a lot of, as we see in headlines, as we open up LinkedIn, a lot of fear that comes through, anxiety. And if we think anxiety as an emotion, as a fear of the future, then there's so many different changes that are occurring that how do we create some islands of sanity for the people within our span of care? Because some work was done by Monday, and I love this. Slightly terrifies me, but I love it also, that 30% of people said that they had knowingly sabotaged an AI project. So there's the thing. They had knowingly sabotaged a project and they were willing to admit to it. So how high is that 30%? Satya Nadella said last week in the Microsoft AI tour that this isn't about learning a digital system. It's about a mindset shift. And that's what we're seeing in the organizations that are doing exceptionally well with regards to this. We know that AI can, you open up, remember when we used to open up Google and we'd look at all these tabs and we'd have all of these tabs. We know that AI, in terms of our interface, in terms of how we are working with it, it can close some tabs. So we just look at the AI overview now. But it's also opening up tabs for people. It is creating a lot of cognitive load. You would have seen from Claire's LinkedIn post about the Harvard Business Review saying that it is increasing the cognitive load of people. AI is shining a light on that which is already there. So whilst AI can close some tabs, we have to know as leaders, as decision makers, as people that are wanting to create the transformation in our organizations, that it's also opening up some tabs. Now, fear is a really big emotion. Anxiety is a really big emotion. I'm really curious about the other emotion that's also there, which is guilt. The biggest emotion that's coming through for people is in relation to guilt that they're actually using the products, the LLMs, whatever they might be. Now, that tells me that there are some people that are not as supported, perhaps, in the implementation of AI. But it also speaks to a lot of the human psyche that we have in this world of the more we do, the bigger the amount of worth we are giving to the organization, to our life, to society. And so whilst we are going in and we're doing enablement programs, and yes, it's all about learning and it's technical skills for sure, a lot of it is unlearning. A lot of it is unlearning that of which is already there, thinking about the conversations that we're going to be having in the future and making it comfortable enough and palatable enough for people to have those conversations. Because time, we have three sort of notions of time. And time is certainly bending with regards to AI. It's exponential. We've seen the word exponential a gazillion times. We have since 1965 been talking about Moore's law. Now we're talking about Huang's law. So whilst it would double the amount of compute we would expect, that massive curve that Claire's
huge
saying now.
hockey stick graph.
Yeah, massive hockey stick graph. Huang's law said that that's doubling every 6 months. So that would say that in the last 7.5 years, we would have seen 30 years worth of technological advancement. But actually, the tail end of last year coming into the beginning of this year, those 6 months are getting even smaller. And so we would have probably seen the amount of technological advancement in 5 years.
Yes.
And let's just take a moment about that. Think about everything that has occurred in the last 30 years. That could be happening to us in 50 years, 5 years. 50 would be joyful. Alvin Toffler talked about back in the 70s, future shock. We're sitting in a space of future shock that we can't keep up with everything that's happening. But also we might have some people in our organization who have played a little bit with AI at home.
Mm-hmm.
They've loved it. They've heard about it. It's their new bestie, you know. Sorry, those from Microsoft. Claude is mine. But you know, Claude, I'm using, and he's my new bestie for some reason. He is a he. But then sometimes we then come into an organization.
It's like
and
time
it's
slows down
so much. Chris Ostergaard talks about this delightfully in his book, Transforming Legacy Organizations. Sometimes it's like a big tanker that we have to move. And that immune system that he speaks about, which is just delicious and is so right for right now. AI can just make things happen in seconds and minutes. It's wonderful. It still surprises and delights me to this day. As humans, we move slower. We move maybe in hours and days because we have to reflect. We have to build trust in the system. We have to build trust in the system we're using, but also the system that sits around us with the system that we're using. And the organization moves even slower. Now, our question to quite a lot of the organizations that we're working with, is it moving slower because our mindset is based on the past? And we don't even want to dip a toe into what the future could look like? Or indeed, is it moving slower because that's just how it is? And so the strands that we see in terms of what has been working well, I kind of think of it like a triple helix. We have technology as one strand. We have business as another strand. And those are probably the predominant strands that people focus on. So what's the tech stack? What are the integrations? What do we need to do in terms of licensing? Should we just have Copilot chat? Should we have 365? What are the levels of licenses that we have? What is the ROI? What is the business model? What are we changing? What are our strategic horizons? And the strategic horizons have shifted. It was so funny. Billy and I have been in a couple of interviews this week. And someone said to us, where do you see Illuminate AI going in 5 years' time? And we both laughed, which was probably not the response that they were expecting. They were like, oh, I would expect they were going to be a little bit more strategic about this. But we both laughed because like, we don't know.
No.
We have an idea of the components, but we really don't know. And so having worked with a few magicians recently, which is another story, one of the most beautiful things that I heard from one of the magicians is this: stop doing tricks and do magic instead. And the companies that are not just doing the tricks, they're doing magic instead, are adding another strand into that triple helix, which is leadership. We saw even this week on LinkedIn that Dario from Anthropic, the CEO, says that 40% of his time is spent on culture. And so those elements are where, you know, in an Illuminate, I'm here from a leadership perspective, the team are here from a full business and technology perspective. Looking through the lens of all of that will make the difference in the transformation. But I want to give you more than 3 strands. I want to talk to you about multiple components that exist here. And I'm going to invite you, because no one's talking to us, so I'm going to assume you're still there. I'm going to invite you as we go through. My question would be this: are you covering off all of these strands in your organization? Or indeed, if you're working in multiple organizations, what are the things that you see are missing? And what are the things that you think your business really needs to focus on? And so if we look at it from a leadership perspective, it has to be strategic. It has to be thinking about, when are we going to use AI? When do we just need to use AI? When does AI support us? When does a human lead? And when is AI allowed to act on its own? And then we have to be thinking about the blockers that exist. Thank you, Craig. The blockers that exist in stopping people to move to that AI fluency? What are the blockers? How can we as leaders show up in a way that allows people to feel less fearful, allows them to adopt it in a way that feels right for them, and also that we're using it too, also that we're mindful of it, also that we're educating ourselves? And in terms of that education, in terms of the training that happens, then the training has to be more of a, I would call it a pickling experience, that we immerse people in it and that we get people to think about their designing their day. This isn't going to get covered off in a 1 to 2 hour e-learning program. You have to think about how the day is designed for people. How do you integrate it in? How do we have AI as a partner rather than just a tool? How do we move from a tool to a decision maker to a colleague? And how do we help people do that so that they feel comfortable with it? And the training that we do, there's nothing that brings us more joy than seeing those people that sit there in a scared place, I guess, Claire, to use that sort of fear, and rigid in the thought process of they've been voluntold to be on this training, but then to see how it can work in their life a little bit more.
Yeah, so we often talk about that move from awareness through understanding to belief, and that moment when someone in a session feels that it genuinely will take something from them is delightful. Delightful.
And it's important that in the training that we help people play, that we talk about mindset, that we talk, as you're saying, Claire, about Craig, about change management. That sits in the space from a leadership perspective. How do we help people through this element of change that is occurring? Because this isn't just going to be a technology that is going to disrupt us. It is going to completely disrupt how we go about the business of doing our business. And as a mindset, we cover a lot of mindset because I think that's really key. We see a difference from know-it-alls to learn-it-alls. And so we even see that shift happening in the tension that exists with this tool being something that can complement what we do and also be a competitor to us. And how do we sit as leaders in the paradox of that? What is our intention for it? And if you ever meet Claire Carmichael, whether she is working with you or indeed you see her in the street, please don't say human in the loop. Please do not say HITL. Human in the center. How do we help people with that level of curiosity? Curiosity is the antidote to fear. How do we help people in that space? How do we create champions, which is really the I guess it's kind of the defibrillator in organizations that help people make mistakes, that play, that are being creative. But fundamentally, how do we communicate well? And that fits the comms from a change management perspective, as you say, Craig, absolutely critical. How do we have feedback loops that go into different parts of the organization and help people understand how it is making an impact for people? And also when it hasn't made an impact and the times when it just hasn't worked at all. And we're going to talk about a couple more strands. We're not going to cover off all of them. But just as Claire starts talking about these leadership intention and mindset, please fire into the chat. What are some of the strands that you see missing within your own organization?
Yeah. So I think the the piece around learn-it-alls is really fascinating. As someone who has been in digital transformation, technology, software through what I thought was a fairly steep level of change on the very shallow version of that graph, with the move to the cloud and SaaS and no code and all of those other kind of core, what I thought were pretty fundamental transformational shifts. Teaching people how to click buttons is not really enough anymore when the buttons can move or change or be added or removed. That almost teaching people how to experiment and play and challenge or test is really important, because otherwise any training, any session that you have run is potentially out of date within 4 hours of you leaving that room. And so actually the skills that we leave people with, the discernment, the ability to challenge and test and experiment is far more important than knowing which buttons to click or where they are. And so what we've seen over the last couple of months is that by working through that strategic initiative at the top layer in that yellow thread, by actually allowing people to make eye contact with their fear and skepticism and wariness, and not pretending that it's not true, which I do think is potentially common, and certainly in my LinkedIn sphere, allowing them to feel that and work through that means that people are different when they leave sessions with us than when they entered. That it is okay for us to have a conversation about something not quite working the way that we intended, to understand what the limitations are, to help individuals understand where it is a technology and where it behaves like a human being, which is hard for people to hold, for both of those things to be true at the same time. And so working through a lot of these in those sessions, through those sort of core AI literacy pieces, understanding what the core limitations are, what it really is under the hood when it's not pretending to be a person, and getting to be comfortable and play with that, and then coming back a couple of days later, more often than not, which is what we're delighted to see now, is that champions are identifying themselves in those sessions. They are the people who start to identify that they require repositioning in their role, that they need to change how they sit in their seat so that the technology can support them more effectively, rather than assuming that what they do is correct and they will stay where they are and they just need more skills to leverage those individuals or those other personas around the table. It is a truly fascinating experience, and it's a very wonderful place to be invited into organisations.
And I think just having a look at some of the chats that are coming through, Claire, yes, Craig, I'm just going to agree with everything that you say from now on. Yes, big reliance on good data quality and understanding of data and where data is housed and how we can get access to it. And wonderful in terms of your thought process, in terms of cross-functional working. I think we've been talking about collaboration a lot. I don't really think copying someone in an email is a collaboration. I like what that was Jeremy that was saying that. I also think from Jeremy as well, organizations need to lose the traditional business case mindset. What's the ROI?
Yeah.
Karim Lakhani, Harvard University said, is it Karim Lakhani? I'm sure it is. The ROI conversation it's actually a category error, because this isn't about adding something in or taking something out. It's a completely changing how we go about the business of doing business. And also Anne-Marie Avery, yes, hello, or Mary Avery, completely agree, as Claire was saying, in terms of the experimentation. And also
we often talk about having sensible conversations in our, so we do a lot of ideation in our enablement sessions. I am viscerally against a session where everyone works the same demo scenario. So everything that we actually do is fully grounded in trying to make a material difference to those individuals' working day that day. So everything is tangible and sort of exists within their universe. And then we have a sensible conversation about choosing which C's to P, right? Because you can do as many POCs as you like, but that level of discernment around making critical decisions early on about what parts of that, where there are overlaps, where there is shared context or shared instruction or shared materials, that those collaborations actually happen inside session, and those conversations continue when we leave, so that they are already starting to work through a material change to something that is going to have a tangible benefit for them. And then you're absolutely right, failing fast, trying to avoid that sunk cost fallacy of, well, we've made it 50% of the way through, we may as well push it all the way to the end. If it's not making a difference, pick something else off your backlog of 45 things that you've identified that you wish it could do for you, so that you can go and be more human and do what you want to be doing instead.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to one of the questions that have come through as well. How do you help organizations understand the importance of this and justify the cost? Quite a few of the sort of shifts that we see happen in organizations is if people are unaware of how it can help, how it can integrate into their work design, how they are supported and challenged within that implementation. Sometimes they're doing sort of ideation sessions and there's nothing that's coming through it. But once we talk about mindset, once we talk about change, once we see where people sit in the notion of change, once we talk about what it can give and also how you can partner with, that helps people understand and justify the cost with the amount of ideas that come out. So, we know that we can have like 48, we love a post-it note or a Miro board. So those ideas can come through and then that goes back into the business. I think also the importance of this is in terms of the justification of the cost, and I love how you put it in inverted commas, is the feedback loops that go as part of this. So even all of the components that you're talking about here, ROI, data, governance, fail fast, experimentation, setting up that culture, those feedback loops have to be consistent as we go through. There's also a beautiful and probably the most I think it was Stanford University. I will find it and I will ensure that we send it out to you as part of some of the notes on the back of this. The prompt report by Stanford and Anthropic, I believe it was Anthropic, so please don't hold me to that, said that prompt engineering, we've all been talking about that, prompt engineering isn't a skill, it's strategic. It is strategic because it's going to be the thing that's going to move us forward. Also, I'm going to ask this question to you, and I love the question from a dear person. Please, can you expand more on the human in the loop ick and the preferred human in the center? What's the difference?
Would love to. Might even write a blog about it, Michelle. So thank you very much for that prompt. For me, with a technology background, the desire to put humans in the loop as a fallback position, as a preventative measure for error, it is a risk absorption strategy that I think is lazy on the part of the developers. Where for me it is articulated like the human is the fuse in that circuit, and the fuse is the first thing that gets burned through. The amount of cognitive load that is going to be put onto human beings when the easy work is removed, the standard work is removed, and all that is left is exception and outlier and challenge is not how humans are designed to operate. So actually it is our responsibility as we go into this position now at the start of something brand new to ensure that humans are allowed to be human in the center of anything that we design, whether it is agentic, whether it is a traditional AI layer, so that we are allowed to be what we are great at and bring what we are amazing at and be supported by the technology, not support it. That's my ick.
And there she goes. So blog incoming, I feel. I hope that answers the question. And even just thinking about champions here. So Craig, who I agree with everything that he says, Russell, says that he agrees with the champions comment from earlier. So this makes a difference. Have your flag wavers, which we 100% agree with. Do you want to talk a little bit about champions, Claire?
Yes. So we have found in running sessions with a variety of businesses of different sizes, that there are heroes who walk among us. There are people who get this in a way that is absolutely beautiful. People who start to say, I see how I can change how I operate to allow for the technology to come in and change the way I work, that allow me to do my job, go home on time, where potentially to our ROI point, we might see the impact of this in retention. We might see the impact of this in ENPS rather than in effectiveness or productivity or utilization numbers. We had a person, I think it was last week, it might have been the week before, who came into our lab. So we will go back and check people's homework and see how people are getting on. The word tripwire was on our thread slide. At that point, we would maybe put into place a couple of tripwires around where maybe initiatives have not necessarily made the progress that they thought they were going to make in the 1 or 2 weeks since we'd seen them last. And this person came in, had 3 or 4 personal use cases. They had, I think it was a PT, they'd planned a holiday, they'd done something else. They were the most efficient and effective person I'd ever heard. They'd taken the weekend to start to coach their parents on where a core AI tool might be the right tool for them. An introduction to prompt engineering apparently was delivered somewhere in the Midlands over a weekend. And so that, having been through that journey of awareness through understanding to a position of belief, with that ability to experiment and play, had started to find not only use cases for themselves and make progress on them in a way that they had not been able to do beforehand. They had already started to pollinate change across their personal and professional network. And that level of advocacy will start to light tiny fires in your organization. It will start to say, have you tried that? Willing and able to have a conversation to say, did you try something and it didn't work? Great. Now no one else needs to try that today. But we will all try it again tomorrow because it might magically work tomorrow. And that level of cultural shift is going to come from those superheroes hiding amongst your business.
And it's, we would always say that light little fires with it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a 1-day promptathon with a buffet and all of that, just to kind of bring, it can be sort of a couple of hours. It can be one scenario that we're all working towards, or, you know, Claire's been working on something and she wants to share how it just went horrendously wrong. And so how do you encourage that notion of, as Jeremy was saying earlier, about collaboration? The champions are definitely the force multipliers, and start the conversation and create the space for people to experiment, to play, to get curious, and to eradicate that level of fear and anxiety that can sit in some organizations. And comms has come up a lot through some of the questions and indeed some of the comments in the chat. So important. I can't believe I'm just saying communication is important. But for some organizations, we have to say communication is important.
It really is.
Yeah. And the feedback loops and what we're also seeing as well, those people who are great at working with the systems are great at working with humans, because LLMs are, insert favorite word for Kirsty, stochastic systems. They are random, they are unpredictable, and they are exactly like humans, who are random and unpredictable. And so what we're seeing, and what I'm definitely seeing in the leaders that I'm working with, is those that are great with humans are great at working with the system. They love the randomness. They're good at discerning. They create a space for people. They posture into the conversation. They give compassion. So stochastic systems need clarity. They need communication. They need collaboration. If we as humans can do that, we can work well with these systems and help the people that are with us in these systems. But we probably sit on opposite ends of the spectrum with regards to stochastic.
Oh yeah, so I see you take the appreciation of the randomness, whereas I actually really appreciate what is predictable. So actually my kind of probabilistic brain, where even, I mean, apologies to anyone who does know me on this call, I probably try and predict what you are most probably going to say to me next. and I try and move towards that position, rather than wait until you've said it to work out where I need to be. And so I think I take a very, well, it's just a probability machine lens when I work with the LLMs to sort of try and play with those levers and actually get a higher randomness or a higher weird level or a higher temperature level, or, you know, and I kind of play with the probability element more than the randomness element. So I think it's fascinating seeing where it is, well, we've talked about this before, right? The haptic nature of feedback from the LLMs, having been working with them for a couple of years, it's delightful that it always tells me what I forgot. if I've left a loophole in my prompt, it will reverse a transit band through it immediately and say, well, you forgot to give me the necessary context for me to be able to execute on that task. If it was a human being, that would have taken days to find that out. So I really appreciate how quickly it tells me what my gaps are to allow me to fill them and move.
I think some of the questions that are coming through, how do we help the superheroes champion? Brilliant question. Shine when leadership is living in the fear and anxiety space. A lot of what I would say is those components are all equally important. I would say working with the leaders and helping them with that fear and anxiety space is incredibly important, so that they, first of all, have an island of sanity for themselves, and then they know how to help the people in their span of care. And what we have seen, and I think I put it in my LinkedIn video, what we are loving, we know it's such a privilege, as I know you will do, who has asked the question, of going into organizations and helping and training and coaching, because we see a lot of what is happening in the organization. What we are seeing are true shiny people coming through and saying that they're working with it. And what we are loving is the fact that there are organizations, whilst there is some fear, they are saying, well, this person seems to have it. Let's support them. Let's see what we need to put around them. Let's get them talking to the right people and fundamentally give them agency. And so I think it's coming at it from different approaches. And for sure, the leadership element is key, because we need to be able to create an environment that brings out the best in people's capability and potential. And we need to be thinking about how we communicate with the systems as well. Often we say, well, I asked it to do this and it didn't work. And imagine if someone new into your organization came in and said, it didn't work, okay, you must leave now. We have to be thinking about how we give agency, I think, to the agents as well as to the humans that work with us too. And we're hearing a lot about agents. I hear a lot about it because I've got the ear of someone next door talking about agents even just now. But what we're not hearing so much of is agency. How do we give agency? And I don't know, I've never realized this before. I don't know if you know this, Claire. Like, I always look up, there's a few people here that love the sort of etymology and the definition of words and the meaning of words, and I do the same. And when you look up the word agency, it has a graph of the increase of usage. And what's really fascinating is that graph is going down.
Interesting.
And so it's so high peak coming up in the 50s into the 90s, and then it's actually been reducing. And so how do we give agency to people? I think that's our role as leaders. How do we help people? Because we are going to get to a space where we will be leading agents. They'll be in our team. And what we get excited about and also incredibly nervous about is this is an incredibly important time, because what are we doing as leaders, as organizations, to look at the career pathways that can exist for people coming into organizations? As we sit here now, the decisions that we make for people will make a massive difference to, Benny's what, 11?
12?
12.
Yeah,
and so our children that are coming through. So the decisions that we are making for career pathways for people coming into the organization is incredibly important. And so how do we sit in a space where we can give people agency? And that comes through from this balance of the paradox. This is empowering and it's unsettling. It's a powerful assistant, and it's also a direct competitor. It can complement us and it can compete with us. It can increase our creativity. You can read the rest. So as leaders, giving people agency to sit in the and space rather than saying, well, it's going to be great, this is going to really empower you, that empowerment can be very unsettling. And how do we help others sit in that and space when we're under stress, when we have an increase in the amount of uncertainty? Then for sure, we will or our way through the world rather than and our way through the world. And so how do we help people in that space to eradicate the fear and anxiety for ourselves, but also for those people that work with us? And this was a really interesting quote that came through. And it reminds me actually of when I had a proper job. And I'm not sure if this feedback is to me, but when I had a proper job, one of my bosses fell asleep during my appraisal. This may be feedback for me in terms of my skills, but I would have taken a machine over anyone else and then that person in that moment. And that is coming through a lot, really interestingly, and a lot more of the work that's been done from a leadership space and the humanity space, the House of Beautiful Business, and all of the work that they're doing, which is just delicious. And so we will move to that. And we've actually been asking that question as part of our interviews as well going forward. We're coming to the end of this time. These strands of leadership and culture are incredibly important. How we posture into this, what are the conversations that we have and we don't have, will make a difference. And we always talk about how do we get buy-in, but we really want build-in. And how do we create a space where it's okay to ask the questions? And these are some of the questions that are coming off. Oh, bless you, Susie. We will send through any chats that have come through that you haven't seen, and any questions that we haven't answered. We will also make sure that that's coming through to you as well. There's a lot of questions that are existing in this space of generative AI. These are some of the questions that come through in some of the organizations that we work with, or some of the questions that we pose to them. Even in the top left, if we were going to start a business today, how would we run it based on the technology that we have available to us? And when we do get to a point when we start freeing up moments for ourselves and also the humans that we work with, what moments are you going to create for them? What conversations are you going to have that you haven't been happening, easy for me to say. And what we've seen and what delights us and kind of paradoxically saddens us, the amount of people that say, if only it could do this, then we could do this. It always exists. It comes up time and time again. People say, I could do my job. If this all happens, I could actually do my job. We know that 60% of what we do is the work of the work. And so if we can get people to a space where they get to do the job that they were employed to do, albeit paradoxically, that also may be shifting in the world that we move forward into. And also the other components that come up are people saying, I could mentor, I could coach, I could learn, I could reflect, I could relax. And could we maybe have that 4-day work week that we've been talking about forevermore? We will send over the recording and the slides, etc. For any questions that we haven't answered. My sincere apologies. I think I got them all. If I didn't, please accept my apologies. We'll look back at them and we'll go through. We are also given an opportunity. Jess will send out all the information to you. So she'll send out an email to you, or indeed get in touch with Jess directly just now. She might pop her email address just into chat just now. But just if you want to have a conversation about enablement, it's not a sales pitch. It's just if you want to have a conversation about it, just get in touch with us. So Jessica at illuminateai.co.uk, but you can just reply to the conversation that comes through. That will most probably be with Janet Robb, who we're working alongside just now in the space of enablement. So that will be a very fun-filled conversation. And perhaps it will get you working on those strands, or we can expand on your question as we go through. And we'd love to see you at some of our other webinars. We have one coming up on the 2nd of April. That's not that far away. That is Agents Assemble with Billy and Ian. And that is really talking about what are agents, what the what of it, whereas Billy and myself will then come along and we'll talk about the strategic elements of that. How do we make that happen? And then the brilliant Claire and Megan will be along in June talking about that delivery. So as we increase the amount of agents in our organizations, that might decrease agency, but how do we deliver at pace for people? And just as a look at those pictures, hopefully Billy Lyle will have a smile when it comes to those webinars. Thank you so much for joining us. We will come back to you with any questions. We appreciate you giving us the time in what is a very busy life. But yeah, thank you. Craig, I agree with you. Russell, you are very, very welcome. And there you go, Jess has popped it in there. So we will send all of this out to you. If you need anything, please do get in touch. It's been a delight. Go forth and have a super day wherever you may be in the world. Take care.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.